I'm Ray Salisbury, author of the book Epic, Adventures Across Aotearoa. I'm here with Kevin Ackerley in Christchurch, where he lives. I'm going to ask Kevin some questions about his epic traverse from 1995. Kevin, how did it all begin? Where were you brought up, and what did your family do?
Oh, hi Ray, thanks for this interview. It began in Hawke's Bay in Hastings. My parents and brother and family loved the outdoors, loved tramping. So we went out tramping in kayakas, rohinis, taroas. And yeah, we just grew up enjoying the outdoors from a young age.
Right. Did you feel you were a competent tramper by the time you were in your 20s?
We were young and fit. We felt pretty confident and quite independent. So we often went on long weekend tramps from Hawke's Bay, and yeah, we really enjoyed the outdoors. Some of the early sort of inspirational adventures that my parents would do would fly into the Aotearoa with a raft, a homemade raft made of tractor tubes, that sort of thing, and spend 5 days rafting down the Aotearoa and doing adventures along the way, hunting and fishing and that sort of thing. So, and going through the Aotearoa Gorge, which is class 3+4 gorge in a tyre tube. So we just learned to be self-sufficient and learned to pick up skills along the way.
And that was with your brother Richard and your parents?
And my mum and dad, my sister, yes.
5 of you?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So what drew you into the mountains? Like, why did you start climbing them?
Well, Richard started a mountaineering club at university, so I joined that. So we knew nothing about mountaineering, of course, but he started climbing mountains, and he climbed Mt Cook. It's what he used to do, virtually no instruction, but there it is, climb it. So he did. And no one ever told you can't do something, so you just did it. So we climbed a number of mountains at university. We had some interesting adventures and interactions with rocks and Dajiak and steep sort of nighttime descents and climbing multi-brun and interesting vertical ascents of Laparoos and that sort of thing.
And this was before 1995?
Yeah, this was it. This was after university, or during university.
So what qualifications did Richard and yourself gain?
None, unfortunately.
In university?
University. Richard studied geology and I studied electrical engineering, both graduated. Yeah.
And what do you do nowadays?
After a career in electrical engineering, I'm actually looking to change careers nowadays. Maybe looking to work in the outdoors, maybe as a tour guide.
Yeah. What gave you the audacious idea of cycling, kayaking, caving, tramping and climbing your way from East Cape to West Cape down in Fiordland?
I think it was basically fear of having to work and seeing all the potential in front of us. So we're like kids in a candy shop. We put all the adventures on the table at a pub over a few beers. I'd really like to do this. I'd really like to do that. Well, let's just do it all. We'll link it all up and we'll make it happen. So this was before work and after university.
So in that little gap between university and real life and responsibility, you went for it and did everything you wanted to do in one trip.
Yeah, basically the fear of missing out.
You had FOMO back in 95, gosh. Okay, so what was your younger brother Richard like? Was he more driven than you?
Yeah, he was very driven. Always pestering my parents to go hunting or tramping. And he was also very magnetic personality, really, so he'd easily get people together and, for instance, forming the Alpine Club.
What Alpine Club? The
Canterbury University Alpine Club.
Right. Right. And he was only 19 or 20 when he did that?
Yeah.
Flip. Okay. Did you have any sibling rivalry, any conflict at all in the 133 days of your traverse?
We had lots of subtle rivalry. The rivalry was who would get to the top first of any particular peak. I edged him to the top of Mt Cook, and I think he hit for the second time, and I think he was a little bit annoyed with that. So we had a kind of a race to the top of Tutuko, and he won it easily. But
who was the better mountaineer? Can I ask that?
Richard was a lot fitter than I was.
Fitter,
yeah, stronger, so, and more confident on rock.
Right. That's why he led up the North Ridge of Cook?
Yeah, definitely more confident.
Kevin, what influence did Sir Graeme Dingle and Paul Caffyn have on your trip?
Well, they let us know these kind of ideas are actually possible, and it's Sir Graeme Dingle's trip to Against the Alps, dual Tremaine. Very inspirational. As kids, we used to read these books growing up, so fundamentally, deeply inspirational. Paul Caffyn's trips around the South Island, Stewart Island, North Island, and then his larger trips around Australia, Japan, Great Britain, west coast of Alaska. Truly amazing. Absolutely fundamental to our ideas of what's possible.
Now, Kevin, you were 23 and your younger brother Richard was 20. At the start of your traverse, did you sincerely believe that you would actually get to West Cape?
Yeah, every obstacle and every mountain, we had no doubt that we were going to climb it. We never sort of were unable to finish anything we started there. So.
How critical was meticulous planning to the overall success of your trip, and what part did the weather play?
Planning was important to the degree that we needed to have a good idea of how much weight we could carry and what food we could eat. So meticulous planning was around what we could carry and where the food drops were. Between food drops and reliant on the weather and the unknown of the terrain. So I guess it was once you plan the route or rough route and where the food drops are going to be and how much food you need. It's down to luck, really, whether what the terrain's going to deliver and what the weather's going to do to your trip. But we were very lucky with the weather until the very end in Fiordland, where we got hit by some quite big storms and nor'westers.
Kevin, perhaps the most prominent feature of your traverse was the sheer number of peaks you guys climbed along the way, from Mt Hikurangi to Mt Tutuko. You summited Mt Cook twice. Not just once, but twice. That was beyond impressive. So what was the most scariest moment climbing and then kayaking?
The most scariest moment climbing was climbing the Chossie East Peak of Mount Hast. The rock was terrible, it was wheat bix. At the top of Mount Hast it was sheet bulletproof ice, and I lost a crampon. So I had one ice axe and one crampon unroped, trying to traverse around the side of that mountain, which wasn't very pleasant. And the worst moment sea kayaking, I guess, was leaving Tutuko Point in 8 metre swells with about a 30-knot nor'wester blowing the tops off. It was very scary.
Yeah.
We got about 5 k's out to sea and then turned around and decided it wasn't quite worth it. And we had to surf in quite a famous surf break coming back into around Tutuko Point. That was pretty scary.
Were you fearing for your life then?
It was very very nerve-wracking, but there were a couple of other occasions in Fiordland where we just got dumped in the surf coming ashore. So you're dragging your broken boat behind you on a dumping surf wave onto the beach and repairing your boat and starting again the next day.
Hey, thank you, Kevin, for sharing your story, and some of it was personal and very inspiring to the readers of my book Epic. It's great to actually see what you look like and sound like in person. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray.
Cheers.